Hi, everybody. I'm Sharon Reed, and it gives me great pleasure to be with you tonight because I think I met this man back in probably 2014. Attorney Benjamin Crump, who I just joked is our of late savior. And I want to bring the attorney on right now because we have so much to talk about since he is fresh off of that really record-breaking, historic, I think you called it. Welcome, Attorney Benjamin Crump. You really need no introduction, but we're so honored to have you do what you do for us. It really is a double-edged sword because on the one hand, I wish you didn't have so much work to do, but unfortunately you do. And fortunately for us, you are here for us at all times. So thanks so much for taking the time because I know now you're especially busy.
Well, thank you so much, Sharon Reed. And I will tell you, I am so honored. You didn't get your proper introduction because of technical difficulties, but I want to let people know you are a groundbreaking, visionary, award-winning journalist who has always used your platform to uplift the culture. So it's so appropriate that we're talking about Black Excellence Virtual Mixer because you represent Black excellence.
Well, I appreciate you saying that. I remember when we first met, unfortunately, Michael Brown had just passed and there was unrest in Ferguson. And everybody wanted an interview. Everybody wanted to talk to Mom. Everybody wanted a piece of you. And at the time, you were shutting it down, rallying around the family. You had to protect the family as you did your investigation and initial work on the ground. You were there instantly. And I remember we locked eyes, and I don't even remember if I asked you, but you ushered me through, and you allowed me a few moments. And I don't know if I ever gave you a proper thank you for that, but you trusted me, and I took that to heart. I really did. And so thank you all these years later. You know, we've kept up with each other, and I appreciate it so much.
Yes, ma'am. I always try to look out for Black journalists because it's important that we try to give people access because you know the life experiences, and a lot of times others might not be as sensitive to a Black mother or father who just lost their child and ask reckless, irresponsible questions. But Sharon, I saw that you were a sister and you were so appropriate with Michael Brown's mother, who really can get emotional at times. So thank you for that great interview.
Yeah, and I felt for them. And I wonder, before we get into your record-breaking settlement, because there's a lot to unpack there, I wonder how you feel about, you mentioned Black journalists, and there's this this thing that is being pushed, I think, by some in the mainstream that you can't be too close. And if you're Black and you say Black Lives Matter, well, you're not objective. You can't cover the story. I feel empathy anytime I have to talk to a mother who's lost a son. But I wonder if you can speak to that, because I know you probably do it more eloquently than I.
Well, you know what I always say, Sharon, we have been blessed with this education, with this talent, and this platform. And I never forget what Harry Belafonte told me at the NAACP Image Awards when I was with Trayvon Martin's parents, and Jamie Foxx came and brought us up to the front of the line so we wouldn't have to wait in the sun. And Harry Belafonte told Jamie Foxx that what good is it having influence if you don't use it when it matters most? So all these Black people that sacrificed, and your parents and grandparents, for you to be on television and be this journalist to speak truth to power, and then you get up there and you let white people tell you how to talk about our lives. Now we need journalists who are going to be like the Ida B. Wells, who always spoke truth to power, said that Black Lives Matter before Black Lives Matter. So, you know, Sharon, I thank Black journalists for having a consciousness to say, no, when we get an opportunity to talk about our people and their lives matter, we're going to do it. And if you think that you're going to shut me down or you're going to fire me, well, I got Ben Crump on speed dial.
We got you on speed. I don't know if you got a twin or maybe you're triplets, but you do seem to be everywhere. That controversy, that Black and brown blood spills. And Speak to it if you can, when you speak often to, unfortunately, Breonna Taylor's family, who just want justice.
Yeah.
First we're talking about firing people, Attorney Crump. Do you think we'll get to a time where, forget your job, when you commit a crime, as many people believe took place there, you'll be arrested?
Yeah, and when we think about Breonna Taylor and the events of this week, Sharon, it was certainly significant. I mean, it was significant on so many levels, not just because of the historic $12 million pretrial settlement that they paid out to Breonna Taylor's family, which is very significant because oftentimes Black women are disrespected and marginalized when they're killed by the police. And so this $12 million settlement was one of the largest ever in the history of wrongful death settlement by police shootings, especially of Black women. We think it was one of the highest of a Black person and one of the highest of anybody. The white woman in Minneapolis got $20 million when she was killed by the Ethiopian police, which people believe that was the highest pre-trial settlement. Now, people have gotten bigger verdicts, but for them to settle, that means they're actually paying. I'll tell y'all a little secret. I've gotten big verdicts. Big verdicts are just that. It's a number on a sheet of paper that is going to be on appeal, and they probably going to pay you a fraction of what that verdict is. But a settlement, Sharon, is no, they're going to pay it. And so that's what was significant about that. But it always was significant because now it sets a precedence for other Black women who are killed. Sandra Bland was killed. Her family only got $1 million. Ayanna Stanley, the 7-year-old in Detroit, who was also killed by a no-knock warrant, her family only got $1 million. So normally Black women just can't get over $1 million when the police kill them. So hopefully we've set that precedence. And the other thing, Shannon, was the reform.
Yeah. Yes. And can you detail that for us? Because as you said, the money is record breaking, we believe. But the reform is really what her family was pushing for. You're never going to be able to bring her back.
Yeah. And it was so deep to Tamika Palmer, her mother, and her family, because they said more important to them than the money was the reform, because they're trying to define what the legacy of Breonna Taylor would be. And that legacy, they want to be no more Breonna Taylors. No other parents have to be heartbroken in the middle of the night saying that your daughter has been killed by the people who are supposed to protect and serve them, or your son has been killed, which is more common in our society. And, no parent, Sharon, wants to be part of that sorority or fraternity. And so when you talk about the reform, when they talk about having police have incentive to live in the city in these minority communities that they police, so they would think twice before they shoot first and ask questions later, because they know these people. They are their neighbors. They see them every day because they live there. And these young officers, you can get a free house by living in the community. And that's huge. I mean, that has never happened in Ferguson or any of these places, Sharon. So that's one. And I don't know if you want to run down the line of the three of them, or you want to.
Well, no, I do want you to do it, but I want you to remind people about just how dangerous these no-knock warrants are. You're asleep in the middle of the night. You would think in America you have the right to defend yourself. You don't know who's coming through that door. And then there was that piece that we learned along the way. We heard the scuttle about, they really tried to muddy her up when you talk about her legacy. So take us through a no-knock warrant and the other reforms that are attached to this settlement.
I'll quickly say the reforms, and then I really want to talk about the no-knock warrants. The other reform was they hired 12 social workers, which is significant because people talking about defund the police, and reallocate the funds. Well, they didn't defund the police, but they did take a significant step, and they got these social workers. So when you have these mental health crises, which often happens, or domestic violence calls, which is most of the time an argument between people who are married or have relationships, and yet we end up getting killed in those things because the police don't know how to de-escalate the situation, and the police don't understand how to deal with people who are having mental health crisis. So those 12 social workers will help there. Then they got an independent inspector general who won't answer to the police nor the state attorney, but answer to the civilian review board. I mean, that is huge. Every time there's an allegation of police brutality or police killing, then this independent inspector general, who's a college professor, has background in criminology, is going to be that person. They get with citizens and they issue an opinion as to what they believe, whether it was justified or not. Now, obviously, the officer still has his due process and the prosecutor has to make their decision, but that civilian review board, once in the inspector general, then, Sharon, it's not an issue about whether the police chief got to debate whether to fire him or not. Once that civilian review board tells the mayor, then that officer is gone. And that's, Breonna, they only fired one officer, fired the other one. So that's significant reform, systematic reform. I mean, it is structural change to try to prevent this from happening. And it's all in this sister's name, Breonna Taylor. Say her name.
Say her name, Breonna Taylor. No knock warrants, if you'll take us through that. And then I want to talk about the attorney general, because money's one thing. Officers who are still on the force, still being paid and not arrested is far different. And so we do need to unpack that, because it feels like he's running out the clock, or at least trying to.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. So no knock warrant, shall, just like with George Floyd, who died as a result of a knee on his neck, part of a chokehold, which should be outlawed, but many cities have not. And it is foreseeable when you come to the conclusion that almost 75% of chokeholds that are applied by police officers are on Black and brown people, especially men. So it's foreseeable that if somebody's going to die from a chokehold from a police officer, it is likely going to be a person of color. Now, just suppose that when you think about no knock warrants, these dangerous, just unconscionable violations of the Fourth Amendment rights against unlawful searches and seizures. That's what the Fourth Amendment was for, Sharon, to say, I have a right to privacy. You just can't come in my house and so forth. But with this no knock warrant, if they can give a story to the judge, he can sign this thing if you have that as the law in your city or your county. And Louisville, Kentucky, as many cities, still have that as the law. It's been abolished now, thank God, because of Breonna Taylor's law, that they won't do it anymore. So in no knock warrants, Sharon, almost 80% of no knock warrants that are being executed in cities in America are against Black people. They ain't busting in white people doors and so forth. It's Black people. So it is so foreseeable. And can you imagine you're a child who has become an adult? You've done everything, to get her to this point where she is being a constructive citizen in society. She's an EMT. She's on the front line. She's fighting Corona. She has about a year and a half to go to get her nursing degree. She's 26 years old. She's doing things right in life. She's in her bed, sleep at night in the sanctity of her own home. And then unbeknownst to her, and these police officers in plain clothes who don't identify themselves and don't announce themselves bust open her front door. And in a matter of minutes, she is in her underwear and her body is mutilated by 8 bullets. And the police give you no answers as to why they killed your daughter. For 2 months, The only people calling the police department about Breonna Taylor, the only people who thought her life mattered was her mother and her little sister mainly. And it wasn't until, thank God, people like Sharon used their influence to start talking about her in the media. And it was not easy to get them to start talking about a black woman who they was trying to assassinate her character as they assassinated her person. But thank God, everybody started saying her name, like Senator Kamala Harris, Reverend Al, Oprah Winfrey. I mean, everybody I called started saying this is wrong. You just can't kill us in our own apartment, especially when you have no criminal history whatsoever. And then we find out, Sharon, that they lied on the probable cause affidavit in the first place to get the judge to sign the search warrant.
When you talk about money versus, I mean, money's part of the system, obviously, in America. But
Yeah.
what about the accountability and the accountability for the cover up, the smear, the lies? Will we get to that point? Have you talked again to the Attorney General, and are you getting anything meaningful?
Yeah, and that's very important that you explain that. There are two ways to get justice when somebody is killed in America. The first way, and the more apparent way, is the criminal justice system. And it is important that people know and understand that the only people who can control the criminal justice system is the elected government officials. You have to go back to your high school civics class. The only people who can arrest people in America and take their liberty away and put them in jail or prison is the prosecutors, the district attorneys, the state attorneys, whatever you call them in your municipalities or your cities. Those are the only people, private people. The only thing we can do is file a civil rights or wrongful death lawsuit and recover monetary damages. That's all we can do. And then we try to use our influence to influence the prosecutor to do the right thing, which historically they never do when police officers kill black people for political expediency, because the police unions are so powerful. And when they do it, they are normally attacked by police unions and white people for putting a white police officer in jail for killing a person of color. And so what we have to do is hold these prosecutors accountable, like in Trayvon, like in Michael Brown, like in Tamir Rice, like in Alton Sterling, like in Sandra Bland, like in Philando Castile, like in Eric Garner, like in Stephon Clark. I mean, Botham Jean, Terrence Crutcher. And the list just goes on and on and on, Sharon, where these prosecutors did not do their job, but yet we didn't vote them out of office. Now, there are some great examples, like in Wesley Bell in St. Louis after Michael Brown. He became the first black prosecutor because black people went and voted on Michael Brown. Cleveland, you know oh so well, Tamir Rice. They voted him out of office when that 12-year-old baby playing on the playground, the police officer shot and killed him in less than 2 seconds. And that prosecutor would not charge the officers. They got him out of office. Laquan McDonough in Chicago, they got him out of office when he wouldn't prosecute those officers, and we elected Kim Fox, my mentee and good friend, and she became the first black woman to be prosecuted in Chicago, Cook County, and then Aramis Ayala in Orlando in the aftermath of Trayvon Martin. She is my mentee, and I'm so proud of her. She became the first and only black state attorney ever elected in the history of the state of Florida, because the prosecutor has all the power. They will determine who in your city is going to go to jail and who is not. And it's normally one of the most powerful positions in any city. And that's who is going to determine whether Breonna Taylor's murderers are charged. A young African-American attorney general who is a Republican. He is Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump's good plan, and he's going to determine whether Breonna Taylor gets justice or not.
Well, when you have the Attorney General of the United States, I believe he said it today, it might have been last night, I think it was last night, comparing, people trying to stay alive and stay indoors to the institution, the disgusting legacy of slavery, that doesn't give us much hope. And it sounds like you're saying, yes, we need to march. Yes, we need to make our voices heard, but we got to run for something. We got to hold people accountable. I remember in the Michael Brown case, and I wonder how you feel about this, because all eyes are on the Breonna Taylor case. And yet here we are all these months later and still no decision with Michael Brown. I remember arguing with my colleagues in St. Louis. As we finally got that grand jury transcript, it appeared Michael Brown was on trial. The prosecutor put Michael Brown on trial, not the officer Wilson.
It is so real, Sharon. Oftentimes, it is the legalized genocide of colored people. They employ the intellectual justification of discrimination. And as I say, as bad as it was to kill Trayvon Martin, as bad as to kill Michael Brown, to kill Breonna, to kill George Floyd, to kill Eric Gardner, to kill Tamir Rice, to kill all these people who have become hashtags in the Black Lives Matter campaigns, it is far worse how they kill us in every city, in every state, in every courtroom, every day in America. I mean, and you do not have to take my word for it. You go sit in any courtroom and you just sit in the back of the courtroom and you watch how justice is being administered. You see the little white boys and girls have very similar fact patterns as the little black and brown boys and girls. And the little white children get a slap on the wrist, and then they're escorted out the courtroom to live out the fulfillment of destiny that God has for them. And they have every opportunity at achieving the American dream, while those little black and brown boys and girls are taken to the corner of the courtroom. They are fingerprinted and handcuffed and convicted of a trumped up felony conviction. And I do mean trumped up, that they have to wear like a cross on their back for the rest of their entire life. I mean, when you get a felony conviction, your life changes dramatically. And in this information technological age, Sharon, you can never get away from that felony conviction. It's the first thing that pops up anytime somebody types your name. And I have to say this one thing, Sharon. In states like Florida, where I live, Tennessee, Texas, and many others, 1 out of every 5 black men will become a convicted felon. And the experts opine, if this trend continues in the next 25 years, 1 out of every 3 black men will become a convicted felon. So I want you to do me a favor, if you would. I want you to imagine that you are a parent of a black male child. And then I want you to imagine that you have a black male nephew. And then I want you to imagine that you have a black male cousin. And I want you to imagine that they're about 5, 6, 7 years old, just 3 little boys playing. And I want you to imagine in your mind's eye that you're observing them at play. And I want you to try to figure out which one of those little black boys that have your blood running through their veins in the next 10 to 20 years will be identified as a convicted felon and live the rest of their life as a second-class citizen in American society that will never, ever give them the benefit of the doubt, the benefit of consideration, and the benefit of possibility. They will kill them softly. And that's why we got to fight to define our children and not let this racist criminal justice system do it.